right? And here it also says, let me just drop this in, that there is a brewing crisis within the United States military. Recruitment and enlistments are down across multiple branches. Countless veterans no longer want to see their family members following in their footsteps and join to serve. As the nation's labor market remains hotly contested, becoming a new service member isn't the same appealing option for long-term financial stability that it once was, right? Joining up, having these upfront bonuses and all this opportunity. Talk to me a little bit about what I just read to you.
Well, this is actually the 50th anniversary of the all-volunteer force. So 50 years ago this summer, the nation chose to transition from a draft-based form of military service to one where they just had volunteers. Of course, they're not true volunteers. They're recruited. They're encouraged to join. And that all-volunteer force has lasted longer and worked better than anyone thought, but we're seeing some of the strains, and you identified some of them in what you just said, that there is, it's getting harder and harder to recruit folks. They're still meeting their targets on retention, so people who are in are tending to stay, but we're struggling to bring in new people. And so that's a challenge for the U.S. military as they shift from the war on terror to meeting high-intensity peer threats. But all of this is happening against a backdrop of changing public attitudes towards the military, and that's really what my book is about.
Yeah, and the book is Thanks for, finish it for me.
Thanks for your service.
Exactly.
The causes and consequences of public confidence in the U.S. military. That title, Thanks for your service, is that phrase that many of us have used. You know, you go into the airport, you see somebody, or you learn that they're in the service or veterans, and you might reflexively say, thanks for your service. And often the recipient of that may feel awkward by that. You know, they may or may not want to be thanked or feel put on a pedestal in some way. And so the book looks really closely at public attitudes towards the U.S. military. And the premise or the basis of it is this striking fact. As Americans, most of us don't know much about the U.S. military at all. Most of us don't have personal connections to the military. We haven't served ourselves. And increasingly, we don't have family members who served. But we all know one thing about the military, and that is that the public seems to hold the military in high regard,
Esteem,
as
yes.
a high confidence. That's what political scientists call a social fact, something that everybody seems to know. They don't know why, but they kind of know that other people seem to hold the public in high regard. I mean, hold the military in high regard.
Right. It's
high regard at high remove. You know, it's thanks for your service. I'm glad you're doing it, so I don't have to.
Kind of like someone who rounds up their receipt at the local drive-through to give to charity, and then they drive away for that extra 30 cents saying, oh, I did my part today. So, instead of driving the Meals on Wheels vehicle to the dude's house to feed them, going that extra further. I'm not saying everybody can do that. Some people have time to go and volunteer more hands-on, and we're grateful for all of those helpers out there. But I would say that USAREC, United States Army Recruiting Command, has a little bit of a challenge. And I find that, it's not always the football device at the fair that's going to attract the individual to come and want to join the military. And maybe if you're going to try to pitch West Point and the football team, then you're going to pull in that one dude that can throw the football. But maybe if you brought out just some dirty Humvees, some stinky canvas with some netting over them, and set them up. Hey, man, even have like a little radar thing from the local National Guard you to set up at the fair, like something like that. Like, oh, wow, what's all this camouflage? What's that big conduit thing going into that air conditioner? That's an air conditioner. All these different smells and the environment. Otherwise, somebody's sitting at USAREC paying, at somewhere high levels paying for these footballs and for like all these different NASCAR, right? Let's talk about ROI per recruit, right? Trying to get them in the military. What's the ROI if you were to work? It's around $250,000 per individual on advertising dollars. And that's taking the whole aggregated amount of like NASCAR, radio. Now, the Broadcasters Associations of America, like the FCC, whatnot, who runs the radio, you have to give the military free airtime.
Right.
It's a law.
Well, and part of this is valuable, setting aside whether it recruits anyone into the military, because it at least introduces or keeps the military in the minds of the general public. Otherwise, they might not run in. There's large geographic sections of the country where there's no military base within hundreds of miles. And so they're just not likely to run into the military. So the way that the military is prominent in public sports and national celebrations, and it almost becomes something of a civic religion. And so there is a function for that. But one reason why it matters is that, going to the heart of the recruiting, the way people are recruited into the military is through influencers, people, coaches, parents, uncles, aunts, whatever, who say, yeah, I think going into the military might be a good option for you. And public confidence in the military helps promote influencers promoting others to join. That's why people are worried, because public confidence has dropped in the last several years. And if public confidence declines, that's going to make recruiting even more difficult, as people begin to say, I'm not sure I want you, my beloved nephew or whatever, my niece. I don't want you to go into the military. I'm worried about sexual assault or what have you.
What do you think about this, Peter? Let me throw this. So I've got friends. Let me just a little bit more of my background for you. I do airsoft war games here in Utah on a large scale, where I have everybody from like a 9-year-old to a 99-year-old running out playing war games with all of the gear on, right? It's a really fun time, large scale, sometimes small little operations that we do. We love it all. But at that point, you get these folks that come out that want to join the military, and then they step off from something so simple as what we're doing out there, and then they go to the National Guard. And so the National Guard's like, oh, hey, I've got a lot of friends in the National Guard through this exact thing I'm talking about, just playing some war games. They're like, how come, all these guys are joining the Guard if they want to put two and two together, right? Where's the positive information coming from? Because a lot of folks say, I want to join the military to me. And I'm like, well, you should go Guard. Why do I say don't go active duty? Why do I say don't go reserves? Because they take them away for like 2 years to some place and they need to go. But Guard will still deploy if it's needed.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I do. And let's be clear that the number one challenge, by far and away the biggest challenge for recruitment, is the condition of the civilian labor market. So if you need to know only one fact, learn how easy it is to get a job in the civilian labor market. When it's easy, recruiters suffer. When it's hard, that's a good recruiting environment. So part of the challenge that we're experiencing today is just the fact that the labor market has been so tight for several years.
Yes, it has. And some of that thing has been just Rubik's Cubed out of our control.
Yeah, that's one thing. The second thing is the pool, the size of the folks who are eligible to serve. And that pool is shrinking. People aren't meeting the conditions on health. They can't have felony convictions. They have to pass the aptitude tests and so forth. And only about 23% of the 23 to 27% of the American youth actually are even meeting those criteria. And then, so that's, a shrinking pool. That's a challenge. Obesity, for instance.
Well, is PE even the same as PE then? Like when I was in junior high in the 90s, we still had PEs and, hit the showers, right? And like calisthenics, up and downs and everything. So, I mean.
And here's two other challenges that are significant. And that is the pandemic made it difficult for recruiters to get into high schools because it was.
High school.
Yeah, it was lockdown. It was remote.
The recruiter jumps in on your Zoom class. Hey, everybody! Anybody want to join the army?
If you think it's hard to learn, math on Zoom, imagine trying to recruit someone.
Oh man, yeah.
So there's that, and then the last thing, which is not widely known, but is a real challenge for recruiters, is that as national health records improve, then the military finds out more about health issues, whether you, for instance, are taking certain Ritalin and other kinds
Adderall. That's what I was going to say. Is I've got moms who've written prescriptions, gotten their kids prescriptions prior,
right,
to 18.
And it used to be the case that recruiters had some wiggle room. They could waffle around those waivers, but now all of that information is right there in the file, and that makes it harder to get those waivers. So those are the long poles in the tent. Those are kind of things that we don't have much control over. And I'm homing in on what is not the most important fact, but it's still a relevant one, and that is the way the public thinks about the military. That's important too. And we need to pay attention to that because we as civilians are unwittingly undermining public confidence in the military by dragging the military into partisan culture wars.
Yes.
So I've got this modest proposal I'm trying to get both sides to agree to.
Oh man,
Let's
good luck.
treat the
Please.
uniformed military as non-combatants in the culture war.
Right.
Okay, you have a culture war, you have an argument. Those are legitimate policy disputes. Argue civilian to civilian, Republican to
Leave the
Democrat.
uniform out of it.
Don't shoot at the military. But right now, we're shooting at the military and we're making the military the target. And that has the effect of politicizing the military by dragging it into partisan
completely. And we're seeing that today, I don't usually like to date my shows, because I like people to have this like timeless classiness. But I mean, you got a book coming out. Thanks for your service. It's that time of year. And right now you've got people holding out on the aisle for getting our generals elected and
confirmed. Generals
confirmed. Excuse me. Yeah, I apologize. It's frustrating, right? And I'm sure my listeners are all aware of it. And it's really harming our talent. It's really like, why would someone want to have to put all of this time to go to school, all of this time to learn strategic planning, put all this time into West Point just to be put on hold if they ever get the shot?
Right. And those guys, not just one individial, right?
It's hundreds, thousands.
Well, it's hundreds of individuals, but each individual is also a family, right?
Right.
And their family is on hold. They can't move. They can't start school. And each one of them is sitting in a job that someone else is supposed to go into. So it has a second order effect of
correct.
That
they move up. They move up. Mm-hmm.
Right. And their families. And so it's reaching thousands of, individual humans, even though it's only, it's several hundred now, close to 300.
And these politicians are going to think that these military men and women who swore an oath to the nation of the U.S. of America, of USA, that's what it says on their name tape, U.S. It doesn't say anything else. It says U.S. Army, U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Space Force.
Yes. Okay. Guardians. Yes, here we go.
Right? I mean, come on, man. These guys are sitting here looking at you like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Who's holding up the Tuberville? What are you doing, man? Are you picking up a spear? Are you going to war?
Well, let me be clear. There's a legitimate policy dispute at the root of it. And so, Senator Tuberville, he has the prerogative to do this, but he also has, it's part of his job as senator to argue the policy. Mm-hmm. My proposal is argue the policy, have the vote on the policy, but don't target the military in order to achieve the policy debate. That's the point.
And the reason why he's even doing this is because he wants abortions to not be favored to women, to personnel who need to go have the procedure in a place where they didn't choose to be, but they're serving. And so they have the right to go to wherever they need to go. But he's saying you don't have that right. He is saying that. He's saying he doesn't want to confirm these generals until they take that out of the entire situation. And they're going off of this whole, Urban Dictionary woke definition out there that's like just made up by themselves. This is all made up. I'm on the ground. I'm 45 years old. It's all these guys that are just like saying these words that don't have any. They're just making up this like what am I trying to say? This narrative.
Mm-hmm. Well, the generals and flag officers that are currently having their confirmations held did not make the policy. Mm-hmm. The Biden political appointees made the policy. So the argument is between Republicans in Congress and
the executive and the legislative, the branches.
That's where they're the ones who are going to have to sort this out. But in the meantime, both sides, in effect, are hurting the U.S. military, the uniformed military, by not resolving this. And And of course, the people who are suffering, I mean, the long downstream consequences are that the military will be less ready to meet the national security threats. If we lived in a benign time when we didn't really need the military and we weren't facing serious challenges, then maybe the consequences wouldn't matter all that much. But precisely because it's a dangerous time, this is a very risky maneuver to be doing, to be playing politics with the military promotions this way. But it's not just the promotions. All of the debates about what is called diversity, equity, and inclusion. That term just now has become a trigger term, and it doesn't mean what it may have meant originally. Here's the facts: we have to recruit from all walks of life. We can't just recruit people who look like you and me. First of all, they'd have to get a haircut.
Oh, stop. No. I've been lost in Afghanistan. I'm a colonel now. No, it's been 20 years I've been lost with my unit.
Right. Okay. But the point is, they can't just recruit from one subset of the Americans. They need to recruit across the board.
Yeah, a color palette.
All walks of life.
Please.
And all walks of life have to be able to work together and get along with their differences and learn how to put mission first. All of that requires socialization, effort. The military has learned how to do this, but they've done this by not ignoring the elephants in the room.